Hello and welcome to all the men and women of the West. I'm Joe, here with me is my co-host Dan.
Hello and greetings.
We're beginning the first in a podcast all about the loves of Conan. It's all about the first love of Conan, to be quite honest. And she is probably one of the most complex characters in all of fantasy and mythology history. You don't get characters like her anymore. I remember one of our comments in one of our videos about her being, oh, so she's just there to excite the men, given that she walks around nude. At first glance in the first chapter, yes, she is. But then Howard does one thing. He kind of destroys that expectation you have and builds up an actual complex, tragic, but also ultimately beautiful character in a way that surpasses the physical. Belit is a raven-haired beauty who often travels in the buff on her ship, the Tigress, and is the greatest pirate at sea after Conan, of course. She meets Conan when she's hounding some sailing vessels, slaughtering a crew of merchants who take in Conan, who is the only survivor and who brushes off those men after they've died, realizing it's futile to stay too attached to them, and accepts her invitation to her bed and onto her crew. And she's supported by a group of men who pine after her when they'll never have a shot. And of course, you've got one or two who aren't quite like that. She is very combative. She's also very set in her ways and very religious and pious, and believes that one should offer up many prayers and a lot of loyalty to one's gods. Conan takes a more wary attitude towards the gods. He was raised in Samaria, where they primarily worship, well, sort of, Crom, and he learned to be wary of his own god, that he'll throw down dooms if you displease him. So he's rather scared of him, and this is a wise policy. Belit does not understand this, because she comes from a very religious background where the gods are on your side. Conan comes from one where the gods are against you. So you've got these two very different attitudes. At the same time, there's a huge similarity between the two in one regard. Conan, in a way, is the barbarian who's to set everything right. Society has fallen into decadence and cruelty towards some people. The people are abused by the society, which is becoming totalitarian and whatnot. Basically, restart the clock on civilization in a way and bring back the good. This is where Belit is kind of like that in some ways. She was a princess and she chose the life of a pirate. And in a way, she pushed the restart button on Conan's life. And she is the female barbarian in a lot of ways. And in this regard, we get to see the female. She is sensual and sexy. She tempts men. She is a temptress archetype, but she is also the Morrigan. There is vengeance and blood and death that haunts her and that surrounds her and all those around her. Unknowingly, I would argue everyone on her ship is doomed, though they don't realize it. She, however, is the most passionate character in the story, and not even death could stop her love. Here, we kind of get an echo, if in a way, though Howard never read Tolkien, of Luthien, how death could not conquer the great love between Beren and Luthien. That, I would argue, is very, very interesting, or even Elrond and Celebrian. You have death that is conquered by love, but you have in turn that madness, which, given that this is almost an adolescent love, adolescence does lead to some madness. We all act a little foolishly when we're teens, and I would argue that that leads her to some madness, and madness overcomes her love. Though she did not drink from the black water physically, she metaphorically kind of did. She figuratively did. And she ends up going mad for gold. That leads to her undoing. And while she and Conan were together for at least a year, probably maybe 2, I don't think she was around for much longer than 3 years with Conan. They must have been terribly young. Conan could not have been older than, say, 21 or 22 during the Queen of the Black Coast. Like, not at the beginning, but at the end. I think at the beginning he's probably like 19. At the end he's probably like 21. I would theorize. Because he's about 15 or so when in the Elephant Tower. Belit is that she, ironically, has the reputation of being the most warrior princess of all the love interests, but she's actually not much of a warrior. Valyria and Zenobia are far more warriors than her. Belit is a commander, not a warrior, but she's also a bit of a yeowoman. She's an archer. Since she's a good archer, but she never actually wields a sword or a dagger or a spear or any arm like that. Yet in art, she's often portrayed with these arms. It's something that the fan view of her is different from how Howard envisioned her.
One aspect that I find interesting about how she obsesses over the gold, that kind of greed, often someone who wishes for all that gold, what comes next? In the end, she chose Conan.
it is a testament to her character growth that she grew from girl to woman. In a way, we can say that her death was the death of the girl Belit, and that when she appeared before Conan, she was a full-blown woman, and that her love in that moment was adult love, which it's not the butterflies in the stomach, the pure sexual attraction and hunger that is adolescent love or lust, but full-on pure adult love that can last through a lifetime, where it's not all about the fun time after dark. There is passion, certainly, but there's also a emotional, spiritual element. Her appearing as a Valkyrie harkens back to Norse mythology, which obviously Howard loved. I think everyone who reads his stories gets that impression, considering he often compared the Conan stories to hero sagas and to the Norse sagas, and that's what he was aiming for. So you've got that comparison that we have to bear in mind. And we should remember that death in some literature is only the beginning. So Belit can be regarded as a bit of a Valkyrie archetype in a way as well. That is to say, one of the many adoptive daughters of Odin who attend the Unheriar in Valhalla. On the other hand, I got the impression, it was not shown, that Belit likely has a very powerful jealous side if Conan had ever looked at another woman. And that's where I think it's a good thing, because she's the sort to go crazy over jealousy.
She's a pirate queen.
She is... I find that the difference is she is rather like the sea. She is tempestuous, passionate, raging at the promontory with all the might of the ocean and the storms. She is the storm. She is the archetype as well of, let's say, Salacia from Roman mythology, or Amphitrite from Greek, as she's also named. She is that raging ocean. She's as gentle as the lake water, just gently lapping at your feet and soothing your woos. She's the beautiful coast, of which there is no comparison, but she's also the raging sea. This story of the Queen of the Black Coast is the story of how Conan fell in love with the sea. Sea goddess, in a way, is also rather like the sirens, luring men to their deaths. My description of her as basically being, in terms of elements, the water.
It is very apt, and yeah, there's an aspect of emotional depth. She does have a lot of emotional baggage, as well as a lot of emotional love.
Yeah.
That runs deep. Yes, initially it seems shallow and lustful, but as she's conversing with Conan,
and as the story progresses, as to the depth of the character, we've got the fact that she's a daughter of a king and she was disinherited when her father died. That's going to carry with it a lot of trauma, and there's going to be a lot of depth there. She escaped from her homeland before they could harm her or violate her or kill her, and made a life for herself. She's obviously a very self-sufficient woman who pulls herself up by the bootstraps, going from princess to pirate, princess to pauper to pirate. That's going to scar a human being.
You know how she enters, she's naked, seductress, and she tempts Conan. But perhaps that can symbolically show she walks in as a temptress, but maybe the one that is constantly tempted is her, and that might portray it.
Yeah, well, that's part and parcel of the temptress archetype, is being tempted, as well as being the one who tempts. That said, in a way, I think Howard was trying to convey that she's laying herself fully bare to Conan, wholly and completely throughout the story whenever she's nude. It's when she's wearing the garb of a battle maiden after death that she's the most bare to him, but she's the least bare to us. So that maybe there's a commentary there about how the only one who will ever see her for what she is, in truth, is Conan. And that the rest of us only see a facade, or see what we want to see or something. And in a way, isn't that always the case with people? Tell us what you think of Belit the character. We hope you enjoyed this 600 sub celebration podcast video, and if you want to stay tuned for that video, don't forget to smash that like and that subscribe button, as though you were Conan and Zenobia on their honeymoon smashing zombies to itty bitty pieces.